Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fiction genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Roswell, New Mexico. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, one of the storylines in this episode is obviously Alex, still helping Michael figure out this whole situation with his mom, because they ended up finding out about Roy. He was the farmhand that helped out Luis and Nora, that being obviously Michael's mom and potentially Max and Isabel's mom. And I'm curious whose ability it was, because it seemed like it might. Well, because I guess it makes sense in the grand scheme of things. Because and it seems like not just like they're allocated to just one ability. It also seems like their powers can grow and shift. Obviously, we see that with Isabel's powers kind of taking their own turn. So, because obviously their farmland was kind of real rough. And obviously for Roy, it's like he was already getting in enough trouble because the farmland wasn't working out. So if he got found out helping them, it would have been an issue. So he's like, I'm going to patch you up, check your wounds tomorrow, and I need you to leave. Even to the point, like, obviously he lied to the Trip when he showed up looking for them. And even the little boy helping him out and everything. And I was like, okay, so because I thought it out last episode, I was like, oh, maybe Roy has some connection to the DeLuca family. It doesn't seem like it, but because he was just like a helping hand on the farm. Because I was like, oh, I don't think that's your kid. It's like it's not, but it's a whole situation. Well, it's interesting because let me kind of finish my thought first. But basically, I'm assuming it was Nora ended up growing all that plant life in the field. So I think it seems like her power is kind of similar to Max's, not unless that was Luis's, because if that was the case, that would make sense, being able to kind of wrap, so that's when what everyone's abilities fully are is kind of hard to tell. So I don't know whether that was Nora or Luis. Like I said, I'd assume if Luis is Max's and Isabel's mom, I would assume that was her, but maybe it was Nora, because we never got the full scope of everything that she was capable of doing, so, but nevertheless, so they stayed there, and it's interesting because we finally got the history of it. It was actually sad because they went into the barn, and you saw the little etch marks and stuff like that. It's like, oh, what does this mean? And Alex is like, you don't know, it's to measure people's height. You never went through that. And Michael didn't say anything. It's like, once again, just kind of little things to be like, Jesus, you're that sucks, something, because that's a stereotypical thing, and look how big someone's gotten, etchings and stuff like that. It's that's such a stereotype, that's such a farm thing, or not necessarily farm thing, but it's such a home thing. The fact is that's kind of an aspect that you were missing, and probably an aspect Isabel and Max probably got, but just that just makes that even more depressing. But basically they end up finding out that the farm belonged to the Longs. They try to talk to one, but it's he wasn't willing to really listen. I believe that was Wyatt, wasn't it? He has his gun pointing at him and everything. Obviously, they let the horses out to kind of get away, but they end up finding another Long there who is actually someone that Michael knows because he ran into him in the library and stuff like that, because he studies Nazis and stuff. So it's oh, they think it's aliens that came here, but this dude was no, it was Nazis. And it's wait, what? So now he ends up kind of explaining the story of because basically what ended up happening, there was a fire that burned all the crops, and then that barn got burned down, a whole bunch of people died, and that was the day before Nora was shipped off to that prison, and everything. So it's okay, so you're trying to figure out because at first you're meeting oh, maybe someone's powers went wild and ended up killing a whole bunch of people or something like that. No, sadly it turns out the U.S. Air Force showed up there to cause issues. The fact of the matter is, they showed up and they ended up killing everyone there. It's sad because, for one, Alex ends up finding out the mysterious Trip, trying to figure out who his identity was. It turns out it was his great uncle. He was the third, so why his name was Trip as in triple. Finds that out. He's also the one that he put a bullet in Roy's head, which we saw Roy and Luis built a relationship. They fell in love. Because I actually ended up finding out what Nora's plan was, because basically she was building something, but the little boy Walt, she was like, you're gonna ruin the surprise. It's basically when she was talking to Walt, she's like, you remind me of a curly haired kid. I referencing Michael, and it's I hope that you get to meet him soon enough. But then that came the question of okay, so the big question that Michael kept asking last time, it's well, why did it take her so long? Why in that year time? It turns out they find they get a piece of like what she was up to, like paper wise, and it turns out it was plans for building a ship. So they were planning on leaving. So at that moment, the moment the ship was done, she was going to get Michael, Max, Isabel, and take her and Luis, and they were going to leave the planet. And so that's why now Michael realizes, like, oh, that's why Mom never came and she was going to come and get me, but just once the ship was coming, because we were going to leave this planet. But now, like, Alex feels terrible because it's like, it's bad enough knowing his family's connected to this, like with just his dad alone with the whole like anti-alien stuff. But now it's like, it's even worse because he realizes that the person who put Nora in there in the first place was his great uncle. So it's like, it was a Maines that did it, and it's like I said, we see that he shot Roy. Nora had hid Walt inside of a box. It's like, till it's all said and done, don't come out. And Trip knew that there were other people in there, but it's like, basically these people are traitors. It's like, it's basically what that came down to. It's like, oh, they're traitors to the human race, so they basically have to die. And it's like, also their deaths are on you, even though he's the one doing all this. She didn't hurt these innocent people, you did, but it's just because she is something you don't understand, and it's sad. And obviously for Alex, he gives, Michael that piece of his ship. It's like, here, I kept this because I didn't want you to leave. But it's like, I don't want history to repeat. I don't want another Maines to be the reason to get in the way of your family in some shape or form. It's like he feels so heartbroken because it's like, yeah, I might, because Michael was trying to tell him, like, no, that wasn't you. You're not the one who did that. He's like, yeah, but I still feel responsible because that was my family that put your mom in that. Like I said, he already knew he was connected, but he didn't know that literally his family was directly responsible for, one, killing all those innocent people, two, also taking Nora. The thing is, we never saw what happened to Luis, but she could have easily been killed, and maybe because he took Nora because Nora was kind of a personal, like, it was a personal vendetta of like, oh, because apparently he had been tracking her for like a year. It makes you wonder what was the final thing that kind of tipped him off to like, hey, they're there. We never really got to find that out. It just at some point a year or so later, he ends up circling back to that farm. So it makes you wonder. So, and obviously that boy Walt, it's like, oh, maybe he's alive. Like, because that's what Alex was suggesting. It's like he was in the box, so maybe he was protected. Maybe, like I said, it has something to, maybe Luis is still out there and maybe she's alive. I don't know. They didn't show that. They just show Trip killing Roy, and the next thing we see is him dragging Nora out. So Luis could have been left in there too. So that begs the question, like, we're getting a good chunk of the story, but I still feel like there are definitely missing pieces to exactly what went down. So that's kind of a heavy thing on its own to kind of be dealing with in this episode. We also have Cam showing up because basically her sister, it's like, yeah, she's not in prison anymore. Apparently she got released, and obviously she learns this from Alex's dad, and it's like, but wait, because she got this letter from her sister, but it's like, no, which I didn't notice. I was like, oh, your sister's name is Charlotte? I was like, I thought your sister's name was Charlie. I never knew that apparently Charlie is short for Charlotte. I never knew that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Not unless I kept mishearing it, but I kept rewinding. I was like, no, she's straight up saying Charlie, but maybe she was saying Charlotte, but it sounded like Charlie. So I was like, oh, is that supposed to be short for Charlotte? Maybe not. Like I said, maybe I do have terrible hearing. But regardless, the fact of the matter is, she talks to Maines about like, okay, what this is all about. Basically suggesting that Charlotte got herself arrested. See, I'm going with Charlotte now just to be safe. Ended up getting herself arrested because, like, obviously it's like Cam, she believed in just all this, she believed in the government and kind of like, doing what was right. And the moment she found out her sister, I don't know if that came up last season, that basically she turned on her sister because her sister was like a whistleblower. And she got arrested by the government for like spreading like government secrets and stuff like that. But it turns out the way Maines is kind of saying it, it's like, oh no, your sister did that on purpose to hide from people, and now she was actually felt safer on the inside than on the outside. But like, why would she feel safer on the inside of a prison than on the outside? Who was she running from? Apparently like some private contractors, because apparently Cam had brought it up, like, wasn't it last episode about her sister, that her sister's kind of in that science lane of things. It turns out her sister was working on something that could have been used as a weapon. Basically, it's something that could be used as a weapon that could basically target people a specific target. Like, it's kind of like a thing of like, oh, release this particular gas, but it's only going to kill someone with this specific target and leave innocent people alive. But Cam was like, but it could also be used as a means of genocide. Like, you want to kill people that have this specific genetic marker, you could end up wiping them all out, and their neighbors going on like it's nothing, you know? And the moment Cam's suggesting that, I'm like, that's probably why Maines is interested. Because even she was like, what's your interest in my sister? He was like, I thought of using her, like her work seemed interesting to me at one point in time. But I'm like, you say that, but I'm like, I'm sure it still is. Like, your thought was, oh, this way you get like the genetic code of all aliens, and you're planning to wipe them out without having to worry about killing innocent people in the process. I don't think he's let go of his goal. I'm sure he has. But even as, you know, Cam was leaving, she, you know, he was like, yeah, I'm sorry to hear about you and Max. And she's like, I told you Max was an alien and you never did anything. Why did you ever go after him? He's like, well, the fact of the matter is there's a story unfolding and I'm curious to see how it plays out. So it's like, I'm thinking for him, he's waiting for everything to come to light. Like, all the aliens get exposed, then he's going to wait for the perfect opportunity to chop them all down. Or at the very least, he's waiting for an opportunity where this could be presented to the world and there'd be no denying it anymore that aliens exist. So to kind of prove him right and kind of put him back in the forefront, like, hey, that was crazy. Here, I'm your number one basic alien hunting expert. Put me on the case. Like, maybe that's what he's waiting for, the government to fully give him the backing, and he can get the public and the government to back him to do whatever he needs to do to wipe out this alien scourge or something like that. Immediately where my mind is, but who knows. At the end, though, we see with Cam, she's driving somewhere and a bright light comes and grabs her, which I'm like, I'm assuming it's the same thing as Maria's mom, because she was gone for like a month. So once again, we still haven't figured out who grabbed her, but was it an alien abduction? Who knows? I would assume this is, but it's like, why Maria? Why Cam? Is it because these are people who know the truth? Like, is this tied into all that stuff? Because that's what Michael was thinking, that maybe this is all, you know, everything with Maria's mom and this whole thing with his mom, like maybe there is some connection there. Maybe there is. I mean, it's just like, you just happen to take the two people who know about aliens for sure and stuff. Well, Maria's mom seems crazy, but obviously she knows what she knows. And obviously Cam knows what she knows, but not less. It was some government situation, you know. I don't know. It just seemed interesting because, like, it was focused on, you know, Maines, him putting up that gun and everything, but like, it's still kind of showcasing, I think, that he hasn't let this go. But then it cuts to the Cam situation, so it makes me think maybe that's connected. Maybe it's not. Who knows? But at the same time, this is all going down. There's a whole situation with Liz and Kyle trying to figure out, like, obviously, you know, Kyle is continuing to study stuff to try and figure out how to do the heart transplant for Max. And so it turns into a situation of, like, you know, Liz wants his help to steal something that could basically help with this whole thing. But obviously it's like Kyle's reluctant because it's like, oh, I mean, it means stealing from his job and everything. And that storyline ends up being a very interesting thing because obviously, like, there's a little bit of a flirtation between him and Steph because it's like, oh yeah, I'm sitting in on these because in the case, you know, someone I know is going to need a transplant soon, so I want to, you know, be able to know what to do. And she's like, oh, this is a friend. And he's like, more like a rival. And I was like, that is a complicated situation. And she's like, oh, this is about a girl, isn't it? She's like, that's straight out of a YA novel, which I'm like, that's interesting because the book that this series is based on is a YA series, isn't it? Which is also interesting because the actor who plays Kyle was in The Vampire Diaries, which itself is also a young adult novel, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just, obviously there's layers to that statement. You figure they probably wrote that on purpose. But nevertheless, but even Kyle was like, oh yeah, like the complicated situation could fill tons of novels essentially. But you could tell that he's definitely kind of has feelings for Steph. Like there's a little, like I said, there's like this little back and forth that they have. It's like it's a little flirtatious. But obviously, like Kyle and Liz get caught kissing in her, you know, Steph's father's office, and she catches them but doesn't say anything. And you can tell because and Kyle was like, "Why did you kiss me?" She's like, "What? It didn't matter. Like, why else would people be in here?" And she didn't say anything. And it's like, because immediately you're like, oh, Kyle's upset because Steph saw you kissing. So I thought that was the main thing, but it turns out it seems like that's part of it. There's another aspect to it because basically Liz didn't think much of the kiss, and he's like, right, you know, that became pretty clear. She's like, but it meant I liked it. She's like, I didn't know you still felt that way about me. And it's like, she's like, I love Max. And he's like, yeah, I know that. And I wish you all the happiness. She's like, I love you too. He's like a brother. It's like, no, I said like family. It's a difference. Because the sad situation is, Kyle, it's like, it's that complicated situation when you care about someone, you're like, I will do anything for you. I will be anything you need me to be. Like, it's kind of very similar to almost like the Lizzie and MG situation in Legacies. It's kind of similar. Like, if you need me to be your rock, I'm glad. The sad thing is, I'll be so glad to be your rock. But the fact of the matter is, I have to do so much lying. I have to lie at my job, potentially risk losing my job, something I care about doing. And, potentially, I'm not even just potentially, I'm straight up having to lie to my mom because of all this. And I would do it all because for you. And it's like, so for him, it's like, I need distance from you because I would do anything for you. I would be that rock for you gladly. But as a rock, I'm standing still. Basically, I can't live my own life if I'm kind of around you in this regard, because all I'll ever do is want to put you first. And in her case, it's like she's keep putting Max first. And it's like, and that's not fair for Kyle. And I think that's the thing that's kind of hitting Liz, realizing like how messed up that is. That it's like, you are asking your ex to help you save your boyfriend, and he does it without question, without complaint. He's willing to do it for you because he cares about you. So it's a nasty, complicated situation, so. And even at the end, like, there's that whole surgery he's watching. Like, Steph had suggested that she was going to be there, but she probably knew that Kyle was going to be there, so she didn't show up. And I think he was kind of hoping that she would be there. But for him, it's like, the moment I help you with this whole Max situation, moment I do the surgery and everything, and he's okay, I need space, so that's kind of sad. But on a more kind of upliftier note, there's a whole situation with Isabel, which I thought was kind of interesting. I think it's such an interesting little element that, like, between her, like, you could definitely tell her and Liz's relationship is kind of getting repaired after everything. And so the fact of the matter is, it's like she's spending a lot of time at their dad's place, at Liz's dad's place. And I thought it was interesting because she's suggesting, like, well, because of my powers are evolving and stuff like that, I'm thinking of kind of using her pushing ability to basically get inside of Liz's dad's head. Basically, make him think Rosa's return is a miracle. Like, he's a religious person. You make him believe it's a miracle. He won't even start asking questions of like, oh, aliens and stuff like that. Because it's like, you are working so hard to save my family. Let me do what I can to help save yours, Because at first, it's like, Liz is like, his health and everything. If he sees Rosa just randomly pop up, it'll give him a heart attack, But it's like, in the entire episode, Isabel is trying to use her powers. And even then, like, even talking to him and stuff like that, it's like, here's 20. And he's like, oh, that's your money's no good here. And she's like, either you take it or I break in here and I reverse rob you. So it's just, it's nice to see, like, her kind of like building even more of a rapport with the family, and especially in this regard, because I think it's also understandable too, because obviously because of the whole Max situation, like that complicated, like that family situation of like, being able to reunite, obviously, like, that applies so heavily with her. So she's like, I want to do that for someone else too. Like, so she's talking to Rosa, which is like, oh, right, you would be freaked out to see me because I was the one who killed you. She's like, I get it. It wasn't you. You were being controlled. And it's like, but they end up talking because it turns out the sad thing is Rosa and Liz's dad, he believes in miracles is what Rosa is like. No, he already believes in miracles, but for him, he doesn't believe he deserves it because, like, she looks back at a memory. Isabel looked back at a memory where, Rosa was high and he's like, what happened to you? And she was like, it's like, where'd you get those drugs? With this, it's like, I got them from mom. Either she doesn't know and I got them, or she does know and she just doesn't care. But he didn't want to believe that, I'm still curious to see what ends up happening with their mom. Like, that's got to circle back in some shape or form of, like, what that is. Like, even if it's not, like, a major story plot of, like, why she's going and why she was kind of under, like, maybe she knows more than she kind of let on. And maybe that's what she was dealing with all by herself. Or maybe it's just going to be a complicated thing of dealing with the personal history of, like, your mom kind of being, not the best mom and abandoning you and all that. So maybe that ends up being it. But for Rosa, it's like everyone in the town kind of believes I'm not worth saving. So maybe you should too. And he's like, well, maybe they're right. And that broke Rosa in that moment, because it's like the one person, like, she said that, but she didn't actually. It's that thing of like, you say that because like everyone can believe it. It's fine. It sucks. But hearing that come from her own dad, like the one person she would hope would never give up on her, it broke her. And she like snaps and throws like a hockey stick through the glass. Because it turns out Rosa ends up saying, like, 1 minute she can be happy and everything, but then the next, like, these voices kind of tell her in her head that she's not good enough and stuff like that. So I'm like, my mind immediately, once again, I'm no medical expert, so my opinion doesn't mean shit, but I would assume that that'd be kind of like, I mean, maybe that's come up before. I don't remember them really diagnosing her, but I would assume that's like a bipolar disorder. Like, I mean, that was 2008, 2009, so I don't know if that's necessarily something that back then they would have been like. I mean, it's been 10 years, so maybe it's something that has been delved into a little bit more subsequently since, so people would recognize the signs more. But I would assume, like, if her emotions flip like that, kind of like a switch like that, it means, I would assume it had to be some kind of bipolar disorder. But for Rosa, her way to counteract all of that was like, drawing like on the wall, because her dad was like, I don't care what you draw or whatever you write, just as long as it puts a smile on your face. And it's like music and everything. But she says that basically all the triggers that basically help calm her down, kind of put her back on the more positive side of things, all of it stems from her dad. Her dad is basically the linchpin of keeping her, essentially saying, keeping her stable, kind of keeping her, like I said, on the more happier side of things. And obviously, Isabel is kind of implanting all that in his head. And it's like, and I love that thing of like, kind of like, at the end of the day, you might not believe that you deserve a miracle, but Rosa does. She deserves like a second chance to have you in her life, because you might not think like you deserve to have Rosa back, but Rosa deserves to have you back because of what you bring to her, that light in the darkness, And so Isabel is kind of watching as, all the trio is reunited, because he's like, wait, you knew? And Leslie's like, I didn't know how to explain it to you without, and he's like, it's okay, it's a God's miracle. You don't ask questions type of situation. And I thought that was beautiful, and it's like, and Isabel brings up this whole thing of like, apparently, these humans had the whole thing about like God, like that people are made in God's image. And it's like, but what about us? Like, do we have our own version of God? Are we all copies of him and stuff like that? And I thought that was such a very interesting thing. Like, I don't know if Isabel had ever really given that too much thought before this episode. It doesn't seem like it. And I thought that was kind of just an interesting conversation she's having with Max, that, basically, finding, that light in the darkness. And for her, like, that light is Max. It's like, I need you to come back so I can have something to believe in, and I was like, because she doesn't really believe in like some God necessarily, but at least she believes in Max. Max is kind of like her guiding light, her light. So I thought that was kind of a neat element. But what we see at the end is Michael's machine kind of malfunctions a little bit, and we see Max opens his eyes. So I'm assuming enough of his body has recovered. He's not fully healed. He's still going to need the surgery, but I think it's enough to kind of bring him back to life. Maybe potentially not. I don't think that was just like a reflex or just kind of like a jolt to the system. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe there's something more to that. Maybe, hopefully, it's nothing sinister, but maybe it is. Because even Isabel is like, if whatever it is out there is listening, I'll pray him for a miracle. If you come back to me, I will never ask for anything ever again. And it's like, so let's see if it maybe it's just an episode full of miracles. At the same time, like, once again, I brought it up earlier, the whole Kyle situation. He keeps lying to his mom. That's already kind of difficult enough. But now it's like, his mom won't let the Noah situation go. He's like, it was kind of an act of God. But for her, it's like, you remember when you thought there was more to your dad's murder? And he was like, no. But then it's like, apparently there was like poison in Noah's system. And she believes like, Max poisoned him. And I think Isabel was in on it. It's like, she won't let this go. And I don't think she is going to until she gets to the truth. And that's going to be a whole complicated thing of like, once the truth comes out, it's like, it'd probably be a while before the truth comes out, but it's like, yeah, they're aliens, but to be fair, Noah was an alien too, but he was a serial killer, but it's still kind of like, still have to probably arrest you because you murdered him, even if she knows the truth. But to be fair, like, she's probably going to be upset when she finds out Kyle's mixed up in all this. She'll probably do whatever she can to protect Kyle from the ramifications for this, but bring everyone else that's connected to this, whether it be Liz, Michael, Isabel, Max, which that's going to be an interesting situation, especially when Max potentially shows back up, because it's like, oh, where you been this entire time? Lies stacked on lies on stacked on lies. There's also like the Maria situation. Like Alex had talked to her, but obviously she wants her space. She won't tell anything, say anything to anyone, but she just needs her space to kind of figure this out. And that's the last contact he's had with her in that time frame. So, and obviously she's avoided being around Michael. So he realizes at this time, he's like, I kind of have no one else to really talk to, because it's like, well, things between him and Maria are very complicated, and Isabel was kind of on her own her own health kick recently, so he really didn't have anyone else to talk to, hence whole him and Alex situation. So it's just a lot of interesting developments. I'm curious to kind of see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.